The cold, sterile light of the airport terminal gleamed on the single silver hoop of the officer's earring as she sneered. "People like you," she said, her voice dripping with contempt, "don't just get to waltz into the Apex lounge." Serafina stood there, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from a profound, bone-deep weariness. The officer saw a black woman in a hoodie. She didn't see the woman who owned the name on the building. The officer, blinded by her own bigotry, was about to make a career-ending, life-altering mistake. And when the handcuffs clicked shut, she sealed her own fate. The journey home was always the hardest part. Serafina Thompson adjusted the strap of her leather carry-on, the buttery soft material worn smooth over years of travel. She felt the familiar ache in her lower back, a souvenir from the 14-hour flight from Abu Dhabi, followed by a 3-hour layover, and now the final leg from New York's JFK to their private airfield outside London. She was a ghost in the machine of international travel, dressed not for effect, but for survival. A muted olive-green hoodie, cashmere, though you'd never know to look at it, was pulled up over her intricately braided hair. Simple black leggings and a pair of well-worn, pristine white sneakers completed the uniform of a woman who valued comfort over a runway show. JFK's Terminal 4 was, as always, a barely controlled riot of human experience. The air thrummed with a dozen languages, the squeal of luggage wheels on polished linoleum, and the perpetual, tinny chime of a final call announcement for a flight to Bogotá. Serafina kept her head down, navigating the river of people with an practiced ease. She wasn't an actress or a politician, but she was, in her own right, a public figure. And she had learned that the easiest way to be invisible was to look like everyone else. Her husband, Marcus, would have sent a private car and a full security detail to escort her from gate to gate. She had politely, but firmly, refused. "Marcus, I'm an artist," she'd told him over a crackling satellite line 2 nights ago. "I need to see the world. I can't do that if I'm always behind bulletproof glass." He had relented, as he always did when she used her artist voice. But she knew he was tracking her flight on his phone, probably pacing the floor of his 30,000-square-foot office in London. She passed the glittering duty-free shops, the air thick with the competing perfumes of 100 different brands, and finally saw her destination. A simple, elegant, frosted glass door set between a high-end watch boutique and a garish souvenir shop. Meridian Global Airways, the Apex Lounge. This was Marcus's baby, his crown jewel. Meridian Global was the airline he had built from the ground up, a luxury, by-invitation-only carrier that catered to the Aura 1%. The Apex Lounge was its heart. Serafina smiled, a small private thing. She was exhausted, hungry, and just wanted a cup of tea and a quiet 15 minutes before boarding. She adjusted her bag and made a straight line for the door. That was when she felt the metaphorical hand on her shoulder. The actual sensation was a sharp "Mom," that cut through the terminal noise like a knife. Serafina stopped and turned. The woman who had barked at her was a Port Authority police officer. She was short, stocky, and wore her authority like a set of ill-fitting armor. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a painfully tight bun, and her face was set in a permanent expression of sour disapproval. A small, tarnished brass nameplate on her uniform read Rourke. "Can I help you?" Officer Rourke asked. It was not a question. It was an accusation. Serafina gave a polite, tired smile. "No, thank you, officer. I'm fine." She turned to go, but Rourke sidestepped, physically blocking her path to the lounge door. "This is a restricted area, ma'am," Rourke said, her eyes flicking dismissively over Serafina's hoodie and leggings. "I know," Serafina said, her patience already fraying. I'm a passenger. A passenger for this lounge? Rourke's skepticism was so thick it was almost comical. She gestured to the frosted glass. The Apex Lounge is for first class, and invited members only. Yes, Serafina said. I'm aware. She reached into her pocket for her phone to show her digital boarding pass, but Rourke held up a hand. Why don't you just move along? The public food court is back by gate B24. They've got a Sparrow. The casual, ingrained racism of the assumption that a black woman in a hoodie couldn't possibly belong, that she must be lost and looking for pizza, was something Serafina had dealt with her entire life. Usually, she let it roll off. Today, she was too tired. Officer, Serafina said, her voice quiet but firm. I don't want Sparrow. I want to go into the lounge. Now, if you'll please, excuse me. She tried to step around the officer again. This time, Rourke put her hand on Serafina's arm. Not a grab. Not yet. Just a firm, proprietary touch. A warning. I'm not going to ask you again, Rourke said, her voice dropping into a low, threatening monotone. I don't know what you're up to, but this lounge is not for you. Turn around and walk away. The terminal noise seemed to fade. Serafina looked down at the pale, thick-fingered hand on her dark green sleeve. She looked back up into the officer's cold, blue eyes. And I'm not going to ask you again, Serafina replied, her voice losing all its warmth. Take your hand off me. The confrontation had begun, and in the sterile, unforgiving light of Terminal 4, Officer Diane Rourke had just set a match to her own career. A small bubble of silence formed around the two women. People hurried by, their peripheral vision registering the confrontation, a cop and a civilian, and they instinctively gave them a wider berth. The two lounge attendants inside the glass doors, both young men in impeccably tailored meridian suits, watched with nervous, unblinking stillness. Officer Rourke did not remove her hand. If anything, her grip tightened. The small, smug smile on her face told Serafina everything she needed to know. This wasn't about security. It was about power. You're causing a scene, ma'am, Rourke said, loud enough for passers-by to hear, painting Serafina as the aggressor. I'm causing a scene. Serafina's voice was sharp, incredulous. You are the one who is physically impeding me. You are the one who is touching me without my consent. It's called doing my job. We've had reports of transients harassing premium passengers in this area. You fit the description. Serafina's jaw tightened. Fit the description? What description is that, officer? Rourke's eyes narrowed. Don't play that card. You're being belligerent and you're loitering. I need to see your identification and your boarding pass. Now. Fine. Serafina tried to reach for her pocket, but Rourke's grip was still on her arm. You'll need to let me go so I can get my phone. Rourke scoffed, as if Serafina were trying a cheap trick. Nice try. Use your other hand, slowly. Treating her like a common criminal, like a potential threat. Serafina took a deep, centering breath. She could feel her heart hammering against her ribs, a hot flush of anger and adrenaline rising in her chest. She slowly, deliberately, reached her free hand into her coat pocket and retrieved her phone. She unlocked it and pulled up the Meridian Global app. The screen lit up with the stark, elegant QR code and her credentials. Passenger, Thompson, Serafina. Flight, MG061, the chairman's flight. Seat, 1A status, Apex Circle, by invitation. She held the phone up for Rourke to see. Rourke squinted at the screen. Serafina watched the officer's brain try to process the information. The name Thompson was common. But Flight MG001 was not. It was the flagship, the daily private configured A380 that Marcus ran for his most important clients, and Apex Circle was a status so high most employees of the airline didn't even know it existed. For a second, Serafina saw a flicker of doubt in Rourke's eyes. The officer must have known, on some level, what that ticket meant. But the doubt was quickly replaced by a deeper, more stubborn suspicion. To a mind like Rourke's, the ticket wasn't proof of an error in judgment. It was proof of a more sophisticated crime. "This is a fake," Rourke said flatly. Serafina was stunned into silence. It's a digital boarding pass, on the airline's official app. How can it be fake?" "Easy," Rourke sneered. "Photoshop, deepfake, whatever you people are using these days. I can get one of these made for $50 in Queens. Now, I also asked for your ID." "I'm not showing you my ID," Serafina said, her voice dangerously low. "I have shown you a valid boarding pass for a flight I am taking. I have not committed a crime. You are harassing me." "Harassing you? I'm detaining you on suspicion of fraud and identity theft." Rourke's hand moved from Serafina's arm to her wrist, the grip now painful. "You give me your ID, or I'm taking you to the substation." "This is insane," Serafina said, pulling her arm back instinctively. And that was the resistance Rourke had been waiting for. "That's it," Rourke snapped. "You're resisting." In one swift, practiced motion, Rourke spun Serafina around, grabbed her other wrist, and slammed her against the wall next to the lounge entrance. The impact was hard. Serafina's phone clattered to the floor, screen down. A small, sharp cry of pain escaped her lips as her shoulder hit the aluminum trim. The two lounge attendants gasped. One of them, a young man named Daniel, fumbled for the intercom to his manager. "She's resisting arrest!" Rourke shouted to the now gathering crowd, playing to her audience. She pulled out a set of plastic zip cuffs. "I am not resisting," Serafina cried out, her cheek pressed against the cool, sterile wall. "You're assaulting me. I've done nothing wrong. You've done plenty," Rourke hissed in her ear, her voice dropping so only Serafina could hear. The smell of stale coffee and mint gum washed over her. "You think you're so smart, don't you? With your fake ticket and your rich girl attitude." Rourke expertly looped the zip cuff around one of Serafina's wrists and pulled it tight, the plastic bit deep. "You're making a mistake," Serafina whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "A terrible, terrible mistake." "Oh, I'm making a mistake?" Rourke laughed, a short, ugly bark. "Yeah, I hear that all the time, right before I throw scum like you in a holding cell." She yanked Serafina's other arm behind her back, preparing the second cuff. The humiliation was a physical thing, a heavy, suffocating blanket. She was being arrested, no, assaulted, in front of the lounge her husband had built, in front of the company that bore his soul. And Officer Rourke, high on her own petty power, was just getting started. The second zip cuff snapped shut, cinching so tight that Serafina felt her fingers immediately begin to tingle. Rourke hauled her upright, spinning her around. The small crowd that had formed was now a half-circle of staring faces and illuminated phones, all recording. "Everyone back up! Police business!" Rourke commanded, energized by the audience. "What did she do?" someone shouted from the back. "This woman is being detained on suspicion of using fraudulent documents to access a secure area," Rourke announced, her voice full of self-importance. She gave Serafina a small, brutal shake. "It's a federal crime." "I did not!" Serafina's voice was loud now, cutting through the terminal. "My name is Serafina Thompson. My boarding pass is real. Check your system." Rourke looked at her, a mask of pure, unadulterated contempt. She leaned in close, her voice a venomous whisper, meant only for Serafina. But a few phones, recording in high fidelity, would later pick up every word. "Oh, I get it now. You're one of those." "One of what?" Serafina shot back, her eyes blazing. "You're a traveling companion," Rourke sneered. "A high-class hooker. Some rich old white guy probably bought you a ticket, and you think that makes you his equal. You think that means you get to waltz in here like you own the place." Serafina's blood ran cold. The insult was so specific, so vile, that it stole her breath. "You people are all the same," Rourke continued, her lip curled. "You see a good thing, and you just latch on, don't you? A parasite in a cashmere hoodie. You are," Serafina was shaking, "you are the most disgusting person I have ever met." "And you're about to be a person with a criminal record," Rourke said, her voice rising back to a shout. She grabbed Serafina by the upper arm, just above the cuffed hands, and began to march her away from the lounge. "We're going to the substation. You can try to find your client from there." Serafina stumbled, her sneakers slipping on the polished floor. She was being paraded through the terminal. Every eye was on her. She saw the lounge attendant, Daniel, standing at the door, his face pale, his phone to his ear. He looked terrified. He worked for Meridian. He worked for her, indirectly, and he was letting this happen. "Officer," Serafina tried one last time, desperation creeping in. "My husband. You don't understand who my husband is." Rourke threw her head back and laughed. It was a loud, grating sound. "Oh, here we go. The husband card. Let me guess, he's a lawyer, a doctor, a rapper?" "He owns this airline," Serafina said, the words heavy and flat. Officer Rourke stopped dead. She turned, her face a picture of exaggerated disbelief. "He what?" "My husband," Serafina repeated, "is Marcus Thorne. He is the founder and CEO of Meridian Global Airways." Rourke stared at her for a long second. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Then the officer's face broke into a cruel, wide grin. "That's the best one I've ever heard. Marcus Thorne? You're claiming to be Mrs. Thorne?" "I am Mrs. Thorne." "Right. And I'm the Queen of England," Rourke said. She gave Serafina a hard shove toward the staff-only corridor that led to the Port Authority substation. "You know, for a high-class liar, you've got no imagination. You're just pathetic." They reached a heavy grey door marked Port Authority Police, no admittance. Rourke swiped a keycard and shoved Serafina inside, into a small, windowless room that smelled of industrial cleaner and fear. There was a metal bench bolted to the floor and a single, heavy-duty phone on the wall. Rourke pushed Serafina down onto the bench. "Have a seat, Mrs. Thorne. We're going to get you processed. We'll find out who you really are soon enough." "I am telling you the truth," Serafina said, fighting to keep her voice from breaking. Yeah. Rourke was busy at a computer terminal, typing with 2 fingers. "Look, I'm feeling generous. You get 1 phone call before we book you. Standard procedure?" Serafina looked at the heavy-duty phone on the wall. I need my phone. His number is in my contacts. Tough. You call someone who's memorized. A lawyer. A bail bondsman. Or..." Rourke looked up, her eyes glittering with malice. "You can call that husband of yours. What's the number for the owner of the airline? 1-800 him lying?" Serafina closed her eyes. She took a breath. And another. She forced her mind to go quiet, to push past the rage and the humiliation. She needed a number. Not just a number. She needed the number. The one that bypassed assistance and security and went straight to the satellite phone he always carried. She had memorized it years ago, as a joke. He had been drilling her on emergency contacts. What if you're in trouble, Sarah? What if the world is ending? She'd kissed him and said, "If the world is ending, you're the one I'm calling." She opened her eyes. "I have a number," she said. Rourke gestured to the phone. "Be my guest. Tell Marcus is to come on down. I can't wait to meet him." Serafina stood. Her cuffed hands made it awkward, but she managed to pick up the receiver and cradle it between her shoulder and ear. Her fingers, still tingling, were clumsy on the keypad. She pressed the 0 for an external line, then slowly, deliberately, punched in the 14-digit satellite number. She listened to the strange, clicking and whirring connection of a secure sat line. 1 ring. 2. Thorn. The voice was abrupt, powerful, and worlds away. "Marcus. Marcus!" Serafina's voice cracked. Just hearing him, all the composure she had been fighting to maintain crumbled. The shift in his tone was immediate. The billionaire CEO was gone, replaced by the husband. "Sarah, what's wrong? Your voice. Where are you? The app says you're at JFK." "I am," she said, a single tear tracing a hot path down her cold cheek. "Marcus, I'm at the airport, in the police station. I've been detained." "Detained?" The word was a shot. "What are you talking about? Detained for what?" I was trying to get into the lounge," Serafina said, the words tumbling out. "And this officer, she wouldn't let me in. She said my ticket was fake. She said I was—" She couldn't bring herself to repeat the insult. "She put me in handcuffs, Marcus. She arrested me." Officer Rourke, who had been half listening, let out a loud, theatrical snort. "Good acting. He buying it?" Serafina ignored her. On the other end of the line, there was a dead, terrifying silence. Then she heard the sound of a chair scraping back, a door slamming open, and a muffled voice shouting, not at her, to someone else. "The chopper. Now. Get Foley on the line. Now." The line went quiet again, but she could hear him breathing. "Sarah," he said, his voice a lethal, controlled calm. "Look at the officer. Tell me her name." Serafina turned her gaze to Officer Rourke, who was now leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, smiling. "Her name is Rourke," Serafina said. "Officer Diane Rourke." "Good. Tell Officer Rourke." Marcus's voice was so cold it burned. "Tell her I'm coming, and tell her she is the one who is being detained." "So is your husband sending his private jet? Or is he beaming down from the Starship Enterprise?" Officer Rourke chuckled, pushing herself off the doorframe. She sauntered over to the desk and picked up a clipboard, tapping it. "Time's up. Let's get to the fun part. Fingerprints, mug shots, the full Mrs. Thorne experience." Serafina hung up the heavy receiver, her hand shaking. "He's on his way." "Oh, I'm shaking in my boots," Rourke said. She unlocked a small cabinet and pulled out an ink pad. "Let's go. Hands." "You should wait," Serafina said. Her voice was steady again. The fear had been replaced by a cold, hard certainty. She had lit the beacon. The cavalry was coming. "Wait! For what? For your story to fall apart?" Rourke grabbed Serafina's cuffed hands and tried to guide them toward the ink pad. "I'm not doing this," Serafina said, planting her feet. "I am not being fingerprinted. I have not been charged with a crime. I'm charging you with resisting arrest, obstruction of justice, and, let's see, assault on a police officer. You shoved me, remember? I never touched you. My word against yours, sweetheart. And I've got a badge. What have you got? A fake ticket and a rich husband who's probably a pimp from the Bronx. Now give me your hands." "No." Rourke's face purpled. "You defiant little—" Psst. The harsh sound of the intercom on the wall made both women jump. Rourke, visibly annoyed by the interruption, stalked over and jabbed the talk button. "Rourke, what?" she snapped. A thin, reedy voice crackled through the speaker. "Oh, Officer Rourke," This is Captain Foley's line. He's asking for you. He sounds angry." Rourke's entire demeanor shifted. The playground bully vanished, replaced by a subordinate. "Foley, why?" "I don't know, but he's patched in from his car. Line 1. Rourke's eyes darted to Serafina, then to the multi-line phone on her desk. A flicker of, not fear, but unease. She wiped her suddenly damp palms on her uniform pants and picked up the receiver. "Officer Rourke, sir." Serafina couldn't hear the other side, but she watched the color drain from Rourke's face. The officer's posture went from a slouch to ramrod straight. "Sir?" Rourke said, her voice a high-pitched squeak. "Yes, sir. I did detain a woman at the T4 lounge." "No, sir. She was belligerent, non-compliant. She fit the description. Sir, I believe she's committing fraud. She claims she's married to—" Rourke's face went from pale to a mottled ashen grey. She looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. "What? No, that's impossible. She's a black woman. In a hoodie. The phone was clearly shouting at her now. Rourke held it away from her ear, wincing. "Yes, sir. Yes, I'm here. At the substation. I cuffed her, sir. She was resisting. Unlock her. But, sir, the... Yes, Captain. At once, Captain." Rourke slammed the phone down. She was breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling. She looked at Serafina, but it was a different look. The contempt was gone, replaced by a new, horrifying dawning. She was staring at Serafina as if she were a bomb that had just started ticking. "What did he say?" Serafina asked, her voice quiet. He said—" Rourke swallowed, her hands fumbling for the key to the zip cuffs on her belt. "He said, 'There's been a misunderstanding.'" "A misunderstanding?" Serafina held her hands out, but didn't move from her spot. "A misunderstanding is when you get my coffee order wrong. This was something else. Look, lady, just let me get these off you," Rourke said, her voice pleading. She was rushing, clumsy. She couldn't seem to get the small key into the cuff's lock. "The hooker?" Serafina said, her voice cutting. "The parasite?" It's a stressful job," Rourke stammered, finally getting the key in. The first cuff popped open. Serafina's wrist was raw, a bright red line of chafed skin. "The pimp from the Bronx? Please, you have to understand." Rourke's hands were shaking so badly she dropped the key. She bent to pick it up. "No," Serafina said. "I don't think I have to understand anything. What I think is that you are in a great deal of trouble. Look, Mrs. Thompson, if that's who you are." Rourke finally got the second cuff open. She rubbed her own face, her tough cop mask completely gone, revealing a terrified, weak woman underneath. We can just forget this. A warning. You go to your lounge. I'll go back on patrol. No harm, no foul." Serafina rubbed her wrists, the blood rushing back in a wave of pins and needles. She looked at the pathetic, crumbling officer in front of her. "No harm, no foul." Serafina repeated the words, as if they were a foreign language. "You put your hands on me. You slammed me against a wall. You humiliated me. You accused me of being a prostitute. And you did it all because I am a black woman, and you didn't think I belonged. No, it was the hoodie, Save it," Serafina said. "You had your chance to just do your job. Now, my husband is on his way, and he's bringing your captain." Just then, the door to the substation didn't open. It was flung open, slamming against the wall with a crack that echoed in the tiny room. But it wasn't Marcus. It was Daniel, the young lounge attendant. And behind him, A severe-looking woman in a sharp Meridian Global Manager's uniform. "There she is!" Daniel shouted, pointing at Rourke. "That's the officer, the one who arrested Mrs. Thompson." The manager, a woman named Genevieve, marched straight up to Rourke. She was an imposing figure, all sharp angles and icy professionalism. She looked at Rourke's badge, then at Serafina, then back to Rourke. "Officer Rourke," Genevieve said, her voice a low, clipped British monotone. "I am the Terminal 4 director for Meridian Global. You have, I believe, made a catastrophic error in judgment." Rourke, who had just been terrified of her captain, now looked at Genevieve with renewed bluster. "This is police business, ma'am. You're interfering." "No, officer," Genevieve corrected her. "This was police business. Now it's a Meridian business. And you are, at this moment, trespassing on property leased exclusively by us. I have already been on the phone with airport operations. And—" Genevieve's eyes flicked to the main door of the substation, which was still wide open. "Ah," she said, a small, grim smile playing on her lips. "It appears the main event has arrived." Rourke turned. Standing in the doorway, flanked by two stone-faced men in dark suits and two high-level Port Authority officials, including a pale and sweating Captain Foley, was Marcus Thorne. He was not in a suit. He was in the dark jeans and black Henley he wore at home, having clearly come straight from his car on the tarmac. His hair was dishevelled. His face was a mask of thunder. He looked past the managers, past the other officers, his eyes locking directly on his wife. He saw her red, chafed wrists. He saw the terror in her eyes giving way to relief. Then his gaze moved. It settled on Officer Diane Rourke. And in that moment, Serafina knew this wasn't just an unravelling. It was an extinction-level event. Marcus Thorne didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence that radiated from him was louder than any shout. He walked into the small room, and the air temperature seemed to drop by 20 degrees. The two PA officials and his own security detail filed in behind him, effectively blocking the only exit. Officer Rourke, who had moments before been trying to reassert her authority, seemed to shrink. She physically deflated, her shoulders rounding, her face turning a sickly, waxy colour. "Marcus," Serafina said, her voice soft. He crossed the room in 2 long strides, ignoring everyone else. He put his hands on her face, his thumbs gently brushing her cheeks. His eyes scanned her, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice a low rumble, for her and her alone. My shoulder is bruised. My wrists—" He saw the raw, red welts. His eyes, which had been filled with concern for her, turned to black ice as he looked over her shoulder at Rourke. "Mr. Thorne," Captain Foley began, stepping forward, his hands flapping nervously. "Mr. Thorne. Marcus. I cannot begin to apologize." Marcus held up one hand, and the captain instantly fell silent. Marcus Thorne was not a large man, but he commanded space. He was all coiled energy, a panther in a cage. He turned, slowly, to face the officer who had assaulted his wife. "Officer, Rourke," he said. The name sounded like a curse on his tongue. Rourke was visibly trembling. "Sir, Mr. Thorne. Sir, It was a mistake. A misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," Marcus repeated, his voice dangerously soft. He took a step toward her. Rourke took an involuntary step back, hitting the wall. "My wife shows you a valid, first-class boarding pass, on my airline. She shows you her identification, and your response is to put her in handcuffs." I thought it was fake," Rourke cried, her voice cracking. She didn't look—" "She didn't look what?" Marcus shot back, his voice rising for the first time. "She didn't look rich enough? She didn't look white enough? No, sir, That's not... We have a protocol. Show me, Marcus said. Show you what? Show me the protocol, he roared, and everyone in the room flinched. Show me the page in your manual that says, if a black woman in a hoodie tries to enter the Apex Lounge, you are to assume she is a prostitute. Show me the procedure for accusing her of being a parasite. Show me the guideline for slamming her against a wall. Rourke had no answer. She was mute, tears of terror and self-pity welling in her eyes. That's what I thought, Marcus snarled. He turned to Captain Foley. Captain, what is the standard operating procedure for an officer who files a false report, commits battery against a civilian, and engages in blatant, actionable racial profiling? Because I have about 30 passenger videos being uploaded to Twitter right now. Foley, who looked like he was about to have a heart attack, turned a furious, beet-red face on his subordinate. Rourke, he barked. Your badge. Your weapon. Now. Sir? Rourke gasped. You are suspended. Effective immediately. Pending termination. You are a disgrace to this uniform. A disgrace to this entire department. Termination. Rourke's voice was a desperate shriek. You can't. I've got 15 years. The Union won't touch this, Foley yelled. You just assaulted the wife of the man who holds the lease on this entire terminal. You think they're going to risk their pension fund for a liability like you? This was the moment. The full, public, humiliating undoing. Rourke, in a daze, unclipped her radio from her belt. She fumbled with the holster on her hip. She slowly, shakily, unpinned the brass badge from her chest, the badge she had hidden behind, the badge she had used as a weapon. She held them out to Captain Foley, her hand shaking so badly he had to take them from her. It was just... I was having a bad day, Rourke whispered, the last pathetic defense of a cornered bully. Serafina, who had been quiet, stepped forward. Marcus put a protective arm around her, but she gently moved it aside. She stood directly in front of Rourke. A bad day, Serafina said, her voice clear and strong. You know, Officer Rourke, I've met a lot of people in my life. People with real power. People who could buy this airport and turn it into a parking lot. And do you know what I've learned? Rourke just stared at her, hollow-eyed. I've learned that true power, real class, is how you treat people who can't do anything for you. It's how you behave when you think no one important is watching. You thought I was a nobody, a parasite, a hooker, and so you treated me like trash. Serafina looked at her chafed wrists. You did this. This is who you are. Please, Rourke begged, the tears finally breaking and streaming down her face. Please, I'm sorry. No, you're not, Marcus said, his voice flat. You're not sorry you did it. You're just sorry you got caught. He turned to Captain Foley. Suspension is not enough. Marcus, please, Foley said. I'll handle this. I'll launch a full investigation. She's not just suspended, Marcus said, cutting him off. She's arrested. There was a stunned silence. Arrested? Foley said, his jaw dropping. On what charge? On what charge? Marcus let out a short, bark-like laugh. How about false imprisonment? Assault? Harassment? Filing a false police report? My wife is a private citizen. I am filing charges. On her behalf. Right now. You have 2 witnesses from my staff. He gestured to Genevieve and Daniel. You have, by my count, 5 other Port Authority officers in this room. And you have me. Arrest her. Captain Foley looked at Rourke. He looked at Marcus Thorne. He knew his career was hanging by a thread. He turned to one of the other officers. Sergeant, read Officer Rourke her rights. Process her for false imprisonment and assault. The final click was not of zip cuffs. It was the cold, metallic snap of real steel handcuffs being locked onto the wrists of Diane Rourke, the same hands that had, less than 30 minutes ago, done the same to Serafina. Rourke didn't fight. She didn't speak. She just sobbed, a series of ugly, gasping sounds, as she was read her rights and escorted out of the room she had, for so long, considered her own personal kingdom. When she was gone, the room was quiet. Marcus turned to his wife and pulled her into a tight embrace. She buried her face in his shoulder and, for the first time, let herself shake. "It's over, baby," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. "It's over." But for Diane Rourke, the karma was just getting started. The suspension and arrest were just the first pebbles in the landslide. What Diane Rourke failed to understand was that she hadn't just insulted a rich man's wife. She had provided the perfect, undeniable, headline-grabbing test case that a lot of powerful people had been waiting for. Marcus Thorne was not just a billionaire, he was a media-savvy one. He knew that a quiet firing would be swept under the rug. This required sunlight, the hardest disinfectant, as he liked to say. His PR team, the best in the world, had the passenger-filmed videos, the official statement from Serafina, eloquent, poised, and devastating, and a copy of the formal charges before Rourke had even finished being processed. By the time Serafina and Marcus were sitting on their private flight, finally climbing over the Atlantic, the story was the #1 trending topic on every platform. The Port Authority Police Department, desperate to control the narrative, did the one thing that proved their culpability. They released Rourke's file. It turned out Captain Foley hadn't been lying. Officer Rourke wasn't a good cop having a bad day. She was a bad cop who had been protected for 15 years. Her file was a horror show. 27 civilian complaints. 19 of them were for profiling or excessive force. 18 of those 19 complaints were filed by people of color. She was a known problem, a racist with a badge, as one of the network commentators put it. But she had always been smart, targeting people she thought were powerless. Tourists with poor English, kids from the outer boroughs, people who didn't have the money or the connections to fight back. She had been protected by her union representative, her cousin, it turned out, and a department that preferred to handle things internally. But now she had done the impossible. She had profiled the one black woman in the terminal she could not bully. She had, as Marcus put it, run her mouth at the Queen. The police union, seeing the PR nightmare, publicly dropped her. Officer Rourke's actions do not reflect the values of our organization, the statement read. Her cousin was quietly moved to a desk job at the sanitation department's impound lot. The criminal charges stuck. False imprisonment, a felony. Filing a false report, a felony. Assault in the 3rd degree, a misdemeanor. The district attorney, sensing a high-profile case he couldn't possibly lose, threw the book at her. There would be no plea deal, but Marcus Thorne wasn't finished. The criminal case was the state's. The civil case was his. He and Serafina sued, not the Port Authority, not the airline. They sued Diane Rourke personally. They sued her for defamation, for the prostitute and parasite comments, which the lounge attendants and a dozen passengers on video had heard, for assault, for battery, and for intentional infliction of emotional distress. "We don't want their money," Serafina told a reporter from the New York Times. "We are doing this to ensure she can never, ever carry a badge or a weapon again. And we will be donating every single cent we win to legal aid funds for victims of police profiling." The civil trial was a slaughter. Rourke, now represented by a court-appointed defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, had no defense. The videos were played. Daniel, the lounge attendant, gave a tearful testimony about how Rourke's eyes looked like a shark's. Serafina's testimony was the most powerful. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply and calmly detailed the quiet, everyday terror of being profiled, and how this one incident was the culmination of 1,000 small cuts. The jury found Rourke liable on all counts. The judgment was staggering. 8.5 million. It was a symbolic number, as Rourke didn't have 8,000, let alone $8 million. But the judgment did its work. Her pension, which she had fought to keep, was seized. Her house, which had been in her family for 2 generations, was foreclosed to help pay the damages. Her assets were frozen. Her life was, for all intents and purposes, liquidated. The last anyone heard of Diane Rourke, she was living in a small, rented room in a town upstate, working the night shift at a 24-hour truck stop diner. Her name, face, and story were so infamous that she couldn't get a job anywhere else. Customers, truck drivers mostly, would sometimes look at her, squint, and say, "Hey, don't I know you from somewhere?" And she would just pour their coffee, her hands shaking, and say, "No, I'm nobody." The karma wasn't just hard, it was surgical. She had tried to strip Serafina of her identity, to make her a nobody. In the end, she had done it to herself. She had become the very thing she feared, invisible, powerless, and poor. And the world was, indisputably, a safer place for it. A year later, Serafina Thompson walked through the familiar, chaotic river of humanity in JFK's Terminal 4. The air was the same, a restless, pressurized mix of jet fuel, Cinnabon, and 1,000 different anxieties. The sounds were the same, the squeal of luggage wheels, the multilingual announcements, the tinny chime of a final boarding call. The terminal was a constant, a place where time reset every day. But Serafina was not the same. She was returning from Art Basel, where her first solo gallery exhibition, Invisibles, had been the undisputed talk of the show. The entire collection, 17 haunting portraits, had sold out in 20 minutes, with a wait list for future commissions that was now 3 years long. The centerpiece, titled The Description, had been a visceral, fragmented self-portrait, her face seen through the reflection of a cracked, grimy police badge. Another, Parasite, Cashmere, depicted a figure in a simple green hoodie, but instead of a body, the garment was filled with a swirling, vibrant nebula of stars, as if to ask, how can you not see the universe inside? The critics hadn't called it revenge, they'd called it a reclamation. She was dressed almost identically to how she had been that day. A simple, elegant, cream-colored knit dress, her braids piled high, and the same comfortable white sneakers. It was a silent statement. She would not change. She would not be forced into high heels and diamonds to prove she belonged. She belonged because she was. As she navigated the familiar path toward the lounge, she felt a phantom echo of the day, a cold spot on her arm where Rourke had grabbed her, a twinge in her shoulder from the impact against the wall. These were not scars, she had decided, but reminders. They were the grit that had produced the pearl. She passed a discreet digital kiosk near the main security checkpoint. The logo was a stylized ST that formed the scales of justice. The text read, "The Serafina Thompson Initiative for Travelers' Rights." Below it, in smaller letters, "Know your rights. Travel with dignity. Free legal aid available 24/7. Marcus had, in his typical fashion, gone nuclear. The $8.5 million judgment from Rourke's liquidated assets had been the seed money. He had matched it with a $100 million endowment. The initiative was now a global foundation with legal teams permanently stationed at the 10 busiest airports in the world. They had already successfully defended over 200 people. A Sikh man detained for his turban, a young student from El Salvador harassed by customs, a grandmother from Lagos who had her medication seized. Serafina's assault had become the catalyst for a sea change. The Port Authority, in a desperate bid to keep Meridian's multi-billion-dollar lease, had become their first partner. The Rourke Protocols, as they were grimly nicknamed, were gone. In their place was a sweeping, mandatory, implicit bias and de-escalation training program, designed and monitored by Sarah's own foundation. She finally saw it, the frosted glass door, Meridian Global Airways, the Apex Lounge. Her heart didn't pound, her palms didn't sweat. She felt only a cold, clear sense of finality. She had faced the dragon in its lair, and now she owned the mountain. The doors slid open before she was within 5 feet. The man at the desk looked up, and his face broke into a wide, genuine smile. It was Daniel. His uniform was sharper, and his name tag now read, Daniel Chen, Assistant Lounge Manager. "Mrs. Thompson, welcome back. It's so good to see you," he said, his voice brimming with a new, earned confidence. "Hello, Daniel." Serafina smiled, her warmth genuine. "It's wonderful to see you. Congratulations on the promotion. It's well deserved." Daniel blushed. "Thank you. I never got to properly thank you. Not just for what you did for me, but for all of this." He gestured around the serene, immaculate lounge. "You changed this whole place. The training we got. It's not just corporate fluff anymore. We're empowered. We know how to protect our guests. We know how to handle difficult situations." "I'm so glad to hear that, Daniel," she said. "Mr. Thorne called ahead, of course," he said, tapping his screen with a flourish. "We have your favorite white tea steeping, and your preferred corner suite is ready for you. The flight crew is standing by for your arrival. Can I have someone take your bag?" "I've got it, thank you," she said, just as she always did. "It was lovely to see you, Daniel." "You too, Mrs. Thompson. Welcome home." As she turned to walk into the inner sanctum, she paused. The lounge entrance had been subtly reconfigured. The main desk was now more open, and the staff-only corridor that led to the old substation was gone, replaced by a beautiful, living green wall of orchids and ferns. Standing near the entrance, by a new, more discreetly placed security checkpoint, was a Port Authority officer. She was a young woman, tall and poised. Her uniform was immaculate, and her hair was in a neat, professional bun. Her name tag read, Sanchez. She was also, Serafina noted, a black woman. Officer Sanchez saw Serafina looking. She was checking the manifest of an incoming diplomat, but she paused her work. She didn't smile, it wasn't the place for it, but she gave a crisp, respectful, unambiguous nod. It was a nod that said, "I see you." A nod that said, "Welcome." A nod that said, "We're on the watch. It won't happen again." Serafina did something she hadn't planned. She walked the few steps over to the officer. "Officer Sanchez," Serafina said quietly. The officer stood a little straighter. "Ma'am, Mrs. Thompson." "I just wanted to say thank you," Serafina said. Officer Sanchez looked confused for a split second. "For what, ma'am?" "For the work you do, for being here." A small, understanding light came into the officer's eyes. "It's my honor, ma'am. The new training, it's good, it's right. We're here to serve, not to intimidate." She added, with a hint of professional pride, "We all read your story at the academy. It's required reading." Serafina felt a wave of emotion so profound it almost buckled her knees. "Thank you, officer. Have a safe shift." "You too, ma'am. Enjoy your flight." Serafina nodded back, a silent acknowledgement of a battle fought, and, in some small but deeply significant way, won. She walked into the quiet sanctuary of the Apex Lounge. The roar of the terminal faded away, replaced by the gentle sound of a string quartet and the scent of white tea and jasmine. She sat in her corner suite, looking out the massive floor-to-ceiling window at the tarmac. A sleek, silver Meridian Airline, her husband's, her family's, was being prepped for departure. She took a sip of her tea. It was perfect. She thought of the word apex. The highest point. A year ago, this place had been the apex of her humiliation. Today, it was the apex of her victory. She was not a parasite. She was not a hooker. She was not scum or a nobody. She was Serafina Thompson. She was an artist whose voice was now heard in galleries across the globe. She was an activist whose name was now a shield for other travelers. She was a wife, a partner to a man who had moved heaven, earth, and the entire Port Authority to stand by her. And in this place, in this empire she had helped build and had now helped change, she was, finally and completely, at home. The story of Serafina and Officer Rourke is a brutal reminder that the assumptions we make can have life-shattering consequences. A uniform and a badge don't give anyone the right to strip someone of their dignity. Rourke didn't just have a bad day. She revealed her true character, and her hard, swift karma was a direct result of the poison she'd been carrying for years. She thought she was targeting a powerless woman. She didn't realize she was provoking the queen of the entire empire. In the end, the only person she destroyed was herself. What did you think of Rourke's downfall? Was her punishment too harsh, or was it exactly the karma she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We spend a lot of time crafting these real-life karma stories for you. If you enjoyed this, please show your support by hitting that like button, and make sure to share this video with someone who needs to see justice served. And if you haven't already, click subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another story.